I think we need to get a psychologist on who specializes in this transition, because on the ordinary course of our life, we've spent the last 40 years accumulating money, right? We're in accumulation mode. We might be earning after tax a couple of grand a week, right? So we get to retirement or whatever, there's no mortgage. You're better off in retirement with your super balance, and particularly our generation would be better off in retirement than right now.
Yeah. I think but
it's the psychology.
You always have money coming in, right? There's a difference. When you're working, you know you'll get paid tomorrow. You know you can work. Once you've stopped, if any listeners are after 50s and are struggling to find work now, when are really facing that wall, it's hard to get back into the workforce in your late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah, and we do see people comment to say, we don't want to pay our mortgage off or salary sacrifice to super, then pay the mortgage off when we retire, because if we lose work, it's harder to get back to work.
Yeah.
But that aside, it's that psychology. I think you said it. I've got money coming into my life every week from work. We get to the line in the sand of, crap, I've got no money. You're going to be scared to spend money. And you might be saying, or listening to this right now, saying, Glenn, how can you sit there and say that when you're not 65? I'm 40. But I can guarantee you, guess what, everyone? I've been in this position. Do you know how, Nathan?
Being self-employed?
Number one. But number two, when I sold my business, I was, what was that? Like 35 or something, 36, 37. So I was working, had money coming in every week, right? Sold the business, the money stopped, but over here I had a big pile of cash. And for 2 years, when I started the podcast, I wasn't earning income. And I was freaking out. So I'm acutely aware of the psychology of this situation.
Yeah, all of a sudden, that preservation of that capital
is paramount.
Yeah, because if I don't have it, I don't have it. And I think
now the carve out is, yes, I was young enough to rebuild a business and I wasn't retiring, but I know that feeling of no money coming in, bucket of money here. Don't want to spend it.
Yeah. And then if you couple that with all the other feelings going into retirement around like, I've got a routine.
Purpose.
I've got social network. I've got, purpose. I've got, you're getting hit with all of that at once. It's a pretty challenging situation. One thing I will say around that, it might be great to go, well, if I get $650, I'll get paid more. Let's just go and blow 50 grand. I'm not saying don't. Go on the holiday. But just note there is less money in the pool. So one thing this isn't illustrating is how long that additional money does last.
And we'll get into that modelling.
Yeah. But I think this is really powerful. I think it's I just want to highlight the black lines as well. That's those asset test limits. So that's when the pension's dropping off.
Yeah. So that's why here, $1 million in super, 5% a year of 50,000, you end up with income of 50,000 because there's no age pension.
Yeah, yeah. But what else is going to happen? These are how much you draw as an income, not how much you spend. So if you're spending more than what's there, let's say you needed 50 and you've got 700,000, you're going to take more out of super this year to top up than you will next year, and you'll get a little bit more pension. And there's that interplay between those two things that plays out over time.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we'll take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the modest, comfortable lifestyle and look at a heap of financial projections and modelling and a case study. We'll be back. I always struggle with that. We'll be back right after this. Now, the ASFA retirement standards, and this was funny because when I threw you under the bus last episode,
we were ASFAing it.
You had it around or whatever. There was the typo.
Had it way around.
But it's basically the Association of Super Funds of Australia. It's basically their think tank.
Yeah. And
an association and members of super funds.
Yeah.
They do a heap of research.
Yeah.
So talk to us about this here.
I think it's really good that they've done these standards because they have an obligation to their members.
Yeah, well, it's a benchmark. It's
and they can universally agree on something and work together on something. But I don't use these in my own work because everyone's situation is so different. And I do find there's a couple of little things I haven't. But let's walk through at a basic level. So they've gone comfortable versus modest. And if you go on their website, you can see what they include inside of what that means.
And just for the people listening only, I might just get you to read all these.
Yeah. So we've got comfortable lifestyle is, for a single person, is $52,383 a year.
Which is after tax.
Yeah,
So
that is
a
money
grand a
in the
week.
grand a week. If a grand a week hits your account, can you live a comfortable lifestyle
Without accommodation payments.
without accommodation? So you own your house, you're not paying rent. This is just that one number. They assume in these two numbers that you are a homeowner. As a couple, it's $73,875, which works out at about $1,400. So if you're like, can we retire? And you're looking at it and going, geez, we spend $2,000 a week. Based on the ASFA, we would be spending much in excess of that.
And the thing is, like, if you have $3 million in your super fund and you've been living and you've been earning high executive salaries of $200, $300, $400 a year, well, this means nothing to you.
And I would encourage everyone to, I know it's a pain, go and figure out what it is. Download your bank statements and run through what did you spend in the last 12 months.
Yeah, how much does it cost you to wake up of a morning?
To do your life the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, do you like mowing the lawns or do you pay someone to do it? All that kind of stuff. So that's the comfortable side. When you get to the modest side, that's removing a lot of those niceties out of the way. So they reckon it's $33,386 a year or $642 for a single per week. It's $640 coming in. Or as a couple, it's $926 a week or $48,000. So if we compare that to the age pension for a single person is $29,000. It's $33,000. So they're saying in that age pension is not enough for a modest lifestyle, which I think is a fair statement. But if you've got a little bit of super, and we look back on those other things, if you're drawing $5,000 a year out of your super fund, you're topping up.
Yeah.
Right? You're able to sort of hit that minimum amount.
This one here, so a modest lifestyle for renters, this is where I don't know, and ASFA, if you are, if this gets across corporate affairs desk or whatever at ASFA, and it's probably on the website, where did this come from? This is just...
It makes no sense to me.
It makes no sense. So why does it make no sense?
Well, look at the difference between a modest lifestyle. So we're looking at $33,386 if you're a homeowner, or $46,663
If you're a renter.
That means you're allowing $13,000 for rent.
Or about $250 a week.
That's fantastic, guys. Where is that? Where are you renting for $250? I don't even think you're boarding with your kids for that much.
No.
Like that's insane. So if you went differently and you went, well, modest is $30,000 a year, or what did we say, $642? Go and rent somewhere, it's $550.
Yeah.
So now you need $1,000 a week.
Yeah. So basically, what we're saying, if you're a single and you want a comfortable lifestyle, which would be $52,000 a year, and you're renting, add your rent.
Yeah, $25,000, $30,000, whatever.
So let's add
$50,000.
$25,000. We'll do $500 a week, whatever. That's 77-ish. So that's how you can work out if you are renting. But this also assumes. Well, sorry, I'll go back. You said it before. This doesn't take into account if you've got $10 million in the bank, if you've got age pension or anything. This is just like if you want a comfortable or modest lifestyle based on our members, on the data that we've researched, this is it.
Yeah.
Now let's have a look.
And it doesn't include rent assist in those, and maybe that's where they get that number from.
Rent assistance isn't huge.
It's
like $120 or something.
$140, yeah. It's not massive.
A fortnight, not a week.
Yeah, so it's not a huge difference, but maybe that's where the maths have come from.
So if you're playing at home, we'll just run through what they kind of call a comfortable lifestyle. Top level private health insurance, fast reliable internet. I mean, that's probably the same as
It's
modest.
just internet these days, yeah.
Own reasonable car, regular leisurely activities, cinemas, exhibitions, yoga, dance classes, home repairs, updates and maintenance, regular professional haircuts, confidence to use air conditioning and the home and all utilities, occasional restaurant meals, replace worn-out clothing, annual domestic trip to see family, and one overseas trip every 7 years. So modest, basic private health, basic mobile and internet data allowance, owning a cheaper, older, basic car, infrequent leisurely activities, no international holidays, limited budget for clothes, regular basic haircuts. Like it's
Limited,
just
limited.
So if we go back here, and this is an important thing, when every time you're at the pub, at the cafe, at the barber, and people say, "Oh, Glenn, like, what do you do for work?" I usually say, "Oh, I run an online media business." I don't like to say that I do a podcast or a money show because then I just get questions and I get talked about money. But when it comes out that I'm a money show, they're like, "Oh, the question's always, well, how much do you need to retire?" And we have to get away from asking that question as a lump sum. We need to go to this ASFA stuff and be like, how much do we need to retire per week based on our lifestyle?
Yeah, look at your situation and go, my favorite question, if $800 hit your account every week and you weren't working, is that enough?
And you own your house.
Yeah, and you're in your house. Start running through the numbers.
Yeah. So
we could go out and we can, but also I've got to pay for this and I've got to pay for that. And we've got the MCC membership. And well, my neighbour doesn't have an MCC membership, so that's not in their budget. So this is it's for you.
So the question is not how much do I need to retire as a lump sum? The question is how much does it cost us to exist? Okay, it's $40 or $50,000 a year. Then we can back calculate it.
Yeah. And go back to your first comment about modelling.
Yeah.
Modelling is only as good as the information we put in. If you're doing some financial modelling, you're using a calculator online, you're going and seeing an advisor, and they just put in a generic ASFA number, but it has no connection to what you spend, that modelling is useless.
So when you say here on this slide, how long will your money last? We could do a basic PMT calculation to see how long money lasts. People might say, what's PMT?
It is a function in your Excel thing. It's something that anyone who's done any finance study will know back to front. But effectively, it is the way you calculate future value of money.
Yeah.
The engineers listening will be like, no, it's not. It's change in distinct value over time because that's where it comes from. But you can Google PMT how to do on Excel. And effectively, what you'll have is we'll need to know 4 of the 5 things. You'll need to know the interest rate you want to apply to it. You'll need to know how much you start with, how much you want to finish with, and how much you're drawing down from it, and how many years. They're the 5 things. If you have 4 of them, it calculates the other one.
Right.
Yeah. Except interest rates get a bit funny. But that's what that basic thing. Most of the calculators you'll see online where it's like, if I had this much, how long will it last? They're just doing that. They're doing a basic PMT. But it's, as we've already discussed, it's assuming everything stays the same. It's linear in its relationship.
Yeah. So when considering age pension, it can be more complicated because the more you spend, the more you draw down in your super, potentially. The less you have, that's a factor. The less you have, the more pension you receive, and then the less you draw down.
Yeah.
So they're kind of the moving things.
If you rewind now and go back to that slide, or then if you want to jump to it, you can kind of see that in the heat map one.
Yeah.
That the amount you're taking out is 5% across the line, but the amount of income changes. So if you've got more money, you get less pension. You're going to have to spend more of your own money.
And that's why you should be updating if you are on the age pension or when you get there, if you qualify, you need to be updating with Centrelink as regularly as possible to make sure that you're getting paid the right amount. If
there's a bad news day and the market drops 10% because something happened overseas, update your Centrelink.
Yeah, for that fortnight.
Exactly.
In the Facebook group, I want to touch on this because I have seen it pop up now and again. Steve said, "Hi team, about to retire and having problems getting through to Australian Super. Over 1 hour wait for advice and 5 weeks to book a specialist appointment with their financial advisor. I tried Aware Super and got through in 2 minutes and booked an advisor in 10 days' time. They were excellent to deal with. Appreciate any opinions on Aware Super as I'm thinking of moving my funds into pension phase to them. Thank you." Now, I will just say, over the years, we've done paid campaigns with Aware Super and probably Australian Super. So I'll just disclose that I've probably received money from both of those funds. But it's not necessarily about those funds per se. I want to talk about the concept of, if you want a fast response bespoke service,
pay for it.
You will pay for it. If you want low cost your financial advisor is in the super fund and there's 1 million members, there may be some delay.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a trade-off that...
And maybe it speaks to intra-fund advice as well.
So a couple of things here. I mean, there's a trade-off that all of the big funds have to make here between cost and service levels. And so do you want to make 3 million members pay an extra $10 a week so that you can have a 1-day response time or a 5-minute call pickup on those odd occasions where you're going to have to do this? And so that's trade-off number one. The second thing I would say is that this sort of most of the big funds erred on the cost-saving side, and many of them have outsourced their call centres. So it doesn't surprise me the experience that you had with Australian Super, and so
and to add insult to injury, there is half the financial advisors in Australia than what there were 6 years ago.
Yep.
So there is a shortage of actual advisors.
Now, the second point I would make is that given the number of times you need to have these calls in your life, response time is probably not number one on your list of criteria for choosing a fund, especially if you're about to move into retirement.
Yeah.
So how you manage the withdrawals from your account-based pension is a much bigger determinant of the outcome. So I don't condone those sort of wait times, but there is a price trade-off here.
But there's also, and this is why I really wanted to touch on this. So every single company at the moment seems to be doing some super rating or review or score system, whether it's the Vince Scully 5-star accredited fund and all this CanStar and blah, blah, blah. I don't love these ratings because what actually matters with my superannuation and my parents' superannuation, what's the money invested in? Will there be liquidity? Can they run the friggin' fund? Number one, is there transparency? Is there any issues with doing withdrawals and all that? The problem I have with some of these CanStars and Chant West and Finder and I think the lady who does Epic Retirement, she's got her own scoring
there's some
system
retirement influencer who's just launched one.
The problem is they're rating funds on metrics like call times and call center response that, quite frankly, I don't think matter.
Yeah. I mean, they matter when you're making the call.
That's right.
But over their life, they don't.
I want a fund that's going to process my withdrawal of $10,000 for my trip within 3 days, and there's cash going to be there.
I mean, maybe they should introduce a $500 fee for a personal call, and so that those who use the resources pay for it.
Yeah.
Just an interesting example. Colonial First State have 500,000 members, and they get 4,000 calls a month. That's about 1% of the members call up every month with a query that amounts to advice, which they can't answer.
Wow. So there's a big problem.
This is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And outsourced call centers are not the solution, whatever the problem is.
Yeah. So I think everyone, we just need to have a cold shower. Sure. But it's interesting. It's chalk and cheese. Australian Super, 1 hour call time. Aware Super, 10 minutes. But you kind of get what you pay for. And I'm not saying because the advice is cheaper when you go to your fund direct and they can provide intra-fund advice, and I'll get you to explain what that actually means. That is cheap. It's subsidized by all the members. There might be a wait. What's the problem? Sure, as their internal business metrics, they probably don't love that their customers are on hold for an hour. But I don't know. It's going to get more of a problem as this aging population needs to retire and get advice.
And the question in my mind is, is it fair that a 25-year-old with a $5,000 balance is going to subsidise advice for someone with $500,000 about to retire? That doesn't strike me as being particularly fair, and that's the problem.
If you're a communist, it's fair, Vince. No, you're a communist.
I don't think Carl would think that was fair. That Carl would probably have it the other way around. So this whole concept of services being paid for by the entire fund membership through their service fees or membership fees, which are being provided to a select subset of members, is problematic.
It doesn't happen anywhere else in society. Maybe tax and your hospital healthcare system, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But so the challenge here is people expect these super funds to provide advice. All of the research, all the market research that the FSC or other people do, most people expect to be able to phone their super fund and go, the market's just tanked, should I move to cash? The law prevents that in general because that's personal advice, and most people that you're going to talk to at the call centre aren't licensed to provide personal advice.
But that's why most people are calling their fund as well.
Exactly.
I need help. What should I do?
How do you pay for that? There is a provision for collective payment for what's called intra-fund advice, which is really advice about your interest in the fund, which is really, can I start an account-based pension? And they're able to go, well, are you over 60? Have you made a conditional release? Here's your balance. You must take 4%, whatever. That's provided for. So as long as it's about your interest in the fund, then that's fine. But most people's assets are stretched well beyond their interest in the fund. They'll have a family home usually. They'll have a interest
and that's
in the fund,
interesting.
and they'll have
You
some
can call your
insane-
super fund for advice and get maybe free advice on the actual fund. But if you've got an investment property, some shares, some other lifestyle things, some downsides of things, you will need to pay extra if that fund offers the advice.
Yeah. And so many funds, not all, but many funds also provide member-paid funds where the individual member pays for it. Many of those advisors are limited. So every financial advisor has what's called an approved product list, which is the products on which they can provide recommendations. And many of the funds, not all, but many of the funds, limit their advisors to talking about their own products, which means if you're 100% confident that your fund is the answer, then getting personal advice from that fund is a very cheap way of getting it.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not going to, they're certainly, if you go to an Australian super advisor, they're not going to recommend you move to Host Plus.
I dare say no. So, look, we're going to leave it there. It's a shorter episode today because we are recording in the ICC. I'm attending the South by Southwest Festival and we've had a bit of trouble with security. And it's so funny, Vince. Like, I was sitting here for an hour before you got here with the audio gear up and, there's people filming with their iPhones everywhere. Set 2 cameras up. Everyone goes into meltdown. Like, it just blows my mind.
Yeah. I'm going to see Teddy Swims tonight at the Kudos.
Right.
Displaying my hipster millennial tendencies here.
I don't even know if I've heard who that is.
He sang at the NRL final.
I didn't even watch that.
But there's a list of requirements at the venue. So you're not allowed to have a camera that's got more than I think it's a 5 centimetre lens.
Yeah.
Like it's just...
Anyway, it blows my mind. We're in a public space. They've told us that we're in a public space. Yes, we don't need a pass. You don't need a pass to enter the public space, and you can film in here, but you can't film ICC staff or ICC logos. We're not doing any of that. And then another security comes, and anyway, we're done. I just wanted to jump on and give everyone an update. We will do another episode in the coming weeks. If we hear more changes around this super stuff. So Vince Scully from Live Sherpa, and you're on the show next week. We respond to some spicy comments that were in
I love
the
a bit of
Facebook.
spicy responses.
All right, see you, friends.
Bye-bye.
Oh, and also, everyone, if you found this podcast useful, can you please see if you can share it with a friend or family member? It's really how we grow, and we love what we're doing here at Retire Right. So thank you very much, everyone, for having a listen today or a watch on YouTube. We'll see you later. Lee in the Facebook group asked, has anyone gifted equity to their children to buy them an investment property? Wondering about the pros and cons of this. Any advice would be welcome, please. Vince Scully from Live Sherpa, welcome back to Retire Right.
G'day, Glenn. It's good to be back.
Yeah, what do we what do you take of this? Because there's probably 15 paragraphs of information that we need, but I just thought it's a good discussion point because I know a lot of people want to help their adult children financially. So how do you take this?
Obviously, this is a very personal matter, for some ways it's better that they have the money now than when you die. But I must admit, I'm a big fan of letting adult children stand on their own 2 feet. Sometimes they need a helping hand, but they should be allowed to give it a go themselves first. My deal with my boy, for what it's worth, he's now a homeowner in Victoria, was I said that if he can save his 5%.
How old's your son?
He's 25.
Yeah.
And didn't go to uni. So my deal with him was I said, look, I'll pay your lender's mortgage insurance bill if you can save 5% and convince a bank to lend you the money. And as it turned out, the Victorian government was handing out money at the beginning of COVID and he ended up not needing my assistance. So my sole contribution to that deal was organising a 5-year fixed rate mortgage at 1.99%, which is just about to come off its
well, he's about to get a bit of a wake up knock on the door.
But he's had 2 flatmates helping to pay the bills along the way. So obviously everyone's different, and that was my view. But there's a whole bunch of
the interesting part of the question here, Vince, is gifted equity. Like, I wonder if they're talking about we've got our own property that has equity, which is the value on paper that, might be tied up. How do we gift that? And I think we need to fundamentally walk back a minute. And this is where I would love to ask Lee a million questions. Does the child want an investment property or is the parents wanting to do this to protect the kids? And this is like maybe they need a first home to live in. Maybe they need some money, pay the HECS and help that off, or maybe
they need to travel.
I like the intent, but there's other complexities that walk in the door as well. And we'll assume, Vince, that there might be 65 or 67 and just or I don't know, 5 years out of age 67. If they're wanting to knock on the door of any Centrelink benefits, the gifting will potentially catch them out. And whether you gift equity, however that works, or hard cash or property or shares, it will all get caught as a gift.
The one exception to that rule is the parental guarantee approach, where you guarantee the kids' equity. So they have to qualify for the loan on their own good, but you're going to provide a guarantee to means they don't need a deposit. That can be a really good way, as long as you're comfortable with putting the family home or your investment property or the family home at risk. It does sort of quarantine the risk, and the odds are, since our home loan default rate is sub 2% in Australia, the odds are that you'll never actually have to stump up with the cash. But you could do. May leave you less able to recover something if the kids get divorced. It's unlikely to catch your gifting problem because it's presuming you're doing it on your family home. If you give them a property which you have some equity in, you might have some stamp duty, and of course the gifting rules might apply if you're close to age pension qualification. Handing over cash is another way of doing it, where if your kids aren't married, that's pretty clean and neat. If they're married, there's obviously issues. Well, do you want to preserve some of it in the event that they get divorced? And much of my take on this, I know this is unpopular in legal circles, but I don't think we should, as parents, and I think I can put myself in that category. It's an odd position to be making a gift to your kids and then putting conditions and ability to claw it back. It all just seems a bit distasteful to me.
So, so are you saying that in legal circles, when you give the gift, quote unquote, it's actually documented as a loan.
Or there's
Or a
some
caveat
security
on it.
taken or some caveat or some documentation that it needs to be returned in the event of certain things happening.
Yeah. But if we go to the, whatever the situation is, Lee wants to give money to their adult children for an investment property.
Yep, it's your money. Do what you want.
I mean, the pros are you're giving money away and it feels good. You've wanted to help your child. That's all well and good. The pros can be as long as you need. It sets the kids up, all that stuff. So I just think the other side of the coin is one that we need to talk about more. Does the child want an investment property? Are you saying you need to buy an investment property? I'll give you the money. They're tied to this mortgage. It won't be positively geared. Is it actually causing annoyance to the child because they didn't really want an investment property? I don't know. They're kind of the red flag discussion things.
And looked at from the kids' perspective, because we obviously deal with a lot of people who are getting support from the bank and mum and dad to usually buy their first home rather than investment property, but works both ways. That, from the kids' perspective, is this giving mum or gran a perfect excuse to interfere in your day-to-day spending habits? And is Lee seeking to exercise those sort of things? Because it is quite easy to, at the Christmas barbecue, to go, well, what are you spending all that money on Uber Eats for? Oh, I've just given you $250,000. I don't want to see you pissing it up against the wall. So these are full of family dynamics. So this is as much a psychology question as it is a money question.
And I think you're right there with the gifted equity. It might be better to do a parental guarantee on the investment property if the kid does want a property. Or, as you did, just pay the LMI or whatever. I don't know.
And, of course, with the new government scheme, I wouldn't even have to do that. The government were going to stump up with the $30,000.
That's right. So anyway, my advice, because Lee said any advice, welcome please, just make sure that your child is on the same page.
Yeah.
Because
I think tread carefully is the answer. They might froth on getting a portfolio of shares as a gift, as an investment, and they might not. They could have, and we'll talk about this after the break, Vince. They could be a hardcore socialist or communist child who doesn't like investment properties because everyone who has an investment property is evil. Isn't every 18-year-old a communist?
I think so. And so it could be, it's like, make a number up. If you wanted to give $100,000 of equity, they might value $100,000 in shares or to see their superannuation, maybe not an investment property. What does retirement mean to you?
It means nothing.
And how old are you at the moment? Is Wikipedia correct?
Man.
Don't answer that.
Yeah, you can't put that out there. It's negative mojo out in the atmosphere because, see, all of a sudden, then everybody starts calling me sir.
Oh, yes. We don't want that.
No.
So what does retirement like? So you're not retired, are you?
No. See, I have never understood the concept of retirement. Now, I guess for people who are trapped in a role and they just really wake up every day and can't wait to not have to do that, then yeah, retirement, I guess, would be a good thing. But everything I have been running around the world talking about is about avoiding that situation in your life, because if you find that you can learn anything and you really embrace that from the time you're young or really at any age, then you can find those things that will allow you to live and generate income for you and your family without having to feel like you have to retire. I think that's the ultimate goal, to be doing something that you love so much.
You don't need to escape from.
Why would you want to retire?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, education is freedom. Who did you write this book for?
Originally, I wrote it for young people because I was one of those kids that could have been trapped behind a machine in a factory, as my dad did and many of my siblings did. And that very easily could have been me, but the path for me was this idea that with knowledge, education is something that no one can take from you.
Yeah.
And the more you learn, the more you can do. It's a relatively simple formula. It's like, I think someone, may have been Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger or something, that said education is like, learning is like compound interest.
Yeah.
It just keeps growing
Yeah.
over time if you let it, if you nurture it. And so, yeah, that was my escape. So I wrote this book to encourage young people especially to learn, to say, I'm not one of these people that believes that certain people have some DNA that makes them smart and other people that they're not smart. I don't buy that. I think anyone has the power to learn.
Yeah.
Maybe we have different learning styles.
Okay, this is interesting. At age 50, you had a transition in your life.
Yeah.
You had spent, I think, 20 years at 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
And you were the CEO and you...
21 years.
Yeah.
But who's counting?
Yeah, not I. And then...
It's a lot of Slurpees.
That was... What was that period like? Because you'd been with the company for a while, you would let it, and then you moved after the merger or saw that through.
Yeah.
And what was your headspace? And this is a good chance to talk maybe about the Blockbuster story.
Yeah.
In Australia, an old house, when you flip houses, we call them a fixer-upper or a renovator's delight.
Oh, yeah.
What was in your head in 2011 saying, I'm going to do the old fixer-upper on Blockbuster?
2007.
Sorry. You were there from 7 till 11.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
And because there were skeletons in that closet once you got to your desk, right?
There's more than skeletons.
So what was that transition like? And,
Well, first of all, this is a really important question because people often spend many years of their life doing one thing, and that becomes their identity. So 7-Eleven was my identity.
You were the guy.
Yeah, I was the guy. And people would say, oh, that's Jim, 7-Eleven. And then when you leave, all of a sudden there's this natural, very human identity crisis. It's like, heaven forbid someone would ask me what I do. And what am I going to say?
Yeah.
Nothing, right? Yeah. So I struggled with that. And I think we all go through that natural problem. And I call it a problem on purpose because it's a trap, because 7-Eleven was not my identity.
Right.
But I made it my identity. I let other people determine it to be my identity. And the very first thing, which is the best thing I could have done, is to take some time off. And one of the things I did in my time off was to go study art. Yeah,
That's
I was
interesting.
Fortunate enough to be accepted into the Florence Academy of Art in Italy, which is a very, very serious art school. It's a 3-year program. You have to be an established artist to get in, but I think they needed some help with trying to build a new school and raise the money for it. And so they invited me to come in and experience it. And I took painting and sculpture and, doing plein air painting, overlooking the piazza, on the Piazza di Michelangelo, overlooking, the Ponte Vecchio and the Duomo, was just an amazing, amazing experience. But what it really did for me is to clear my head and to remind me that my identity was not 7-Eleven. Now, all of a sudden, I'm an artist. And I have busloads of tourists coming up and putting coins in my ball cap that was on the ground. I know. And this is after a pretty good equity payday at 7-Eleven. Yeah. So my art teacher thought that was pretty amusing that they'd be putting, a couple of euros in my ball cap on the ground. But I was now an artist, and I realized that my identity can be whatever I want it to be. All I have to do is learn something new. And now that can be my identity. Or you know what? Maybe my identity can be, he's a Renaissance man. He can do anything.
Yeah.
Because I've cracked the code on learning to learn.
Hey, it's Glenn here. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You made it to the end. Can I ask a favor? Can you hit that like button and maybe hit subscribe if you want to get notified when we release further videos just like this one, whether you watch the Money, Money, Money podcast or Retire Right. And remember, if you want to learn more about investing, I've got an investing book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, and there's a link in the description to get your hands on a copy. Thank you so much. Bye.